Welcome to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/Animal Stories for Kids. And now, it's time for our story. Once upon a time, there was a badger named Hugo. Hugo the badger lived in the hills of the countryside, where the fields stretched out under the moonlit sky. He was a very special badger. At least, that's what he liked to believe. Most nights, he spent his time digging tunnels, looking for tasty worms and grubs, and lounging in his cozy set. But recently, Hugo had been feeling a bit tired of doing all the digging and looking for food on his own. And he was feeling a little bit nostalgic. Or he missed his childhood and the things he liked when he was just a little cub. He missed being baby Hugo. One evening, Hugo the badger sat at the entrance of his set, gazing at the wide meadow under the stars. And he said to himself, "I wish I could go back in time. Life was so easy when I was just a baby badger. I didn't have to dig my own set or find my own food. Mother did everything for me. Everything was perfect." And with that thought, an idea sparked in Hugo's mind. If he could somehow go back in time, he could relive his carefree days as a smaller, happier badger cub. It was a brilliant idea. Or so he thought. But how would he do that? He thought about his daily life, and if he somehow went back and retraced his life to doing everything he did every night over and over again, it would mean he would be going back in time. Maybe, possibly, perhaps. So then, Hugo the badger decided to retrace his steps from the last few nights. He said to himself, "If I just run back and retrace my steps through all the places I've been throughout the night, I'll eventually travel back in time. It should work. Maybe, possibly, perhaps." So, off he went, scampering through the woods and fields and retracing all his steps from nights past. He went to where he hung out at the night before, then retraced and walked on the trails he made before nighttime, and where he was before then on top of a hill. Then he went back to his set, where he woke up and sat in his little nook, where he snuggled and went to sleep during the day before. Then he went back out of his set and retraced his steps again to where he was the night before that night, and then the place where he was a little before that nighttime, and then back to his set. He did this a few times, but didn't notice time going backwards at all. He just got more tired, and now it was getting brighter outside and time to go to sleep for him. Hugo said to himself, "Wow, that was a lot of hard work for nothing. I'm not really going back in time at all. There has to be a better way." He wondered why retracing his steps wasn't working. And then he came up with another idea. Hugo the badger said to himself, "I know why time isn't moving backwards. I was just retracing my steps. But I need to retrace my steps walking backwards. Then time will turn back. Maybe, possibly, perhaps." So the next evening, Hugo the badger went off to retrace his steps, but this time, walking backwards. It was harder than it sounded. Hugo had to run backwards while trying to remember exactly where he had walked, scurried, or dug. Things started off well enough. He ran backwards through the meadow, looking back as he went to where he was the night before. But this time, almost running into a hare who was just minding its own business. Then when Hugo got to his place where he was the night before, He ran backwards through a patch of tall grass towards where he was a little bit before the nighttime before that. This time, he accidentally stumbled over a pheasant who was looking around for food. "Sorry," Hugo the badger said to the pheasant. "I'm trying to go back in time to when I was younger." The pheasant looked at Hugo with confusion and flew away. Hugo the badger began to pick up speed as he kept going backwards and retracing all his steps. And then, as he was going as fast as he could, he tripped over a log and tumbled into a bush. Determined to keep going, he got up and kept running backwards. Hugo's little legs worked really fast. But then, he smacked right into a tree trunk. "Ouch!" he cried, rubbing the back of his head. Still, Hugo didn't give up. He tried again, only to stumble over a rock and land on his tail. "This is impossible," he groaned, sitting in a heap of leaves under the moonlit sky. "I'm going to get myself hurt, or worse. There's gotta be another way." As Hugo the badger lied on the ground, hurt from falling and tired of trying to go backwards, a long-eared owl flew down and rested on a branch near him. The long-eared owl asked Hugo, "Are you okay?" "Not really," said Hugo to the long-eared owl. The long-eared owl asked Hugo the badger, "What's wrong? You look hurt. How did that happen?" Hugo said, "Well, I wanted to go back in time, and I've tried retracing my steps and thought that maybe, possibly, perhaps that would work. But it didn't. So I tried retracing my steps and running backwards, thinking that maybe, possibly, perhaps that would surely move time backwards too. But it's not working either. Do you know how I can go back in time?" The long-eared owl tilted its head and asked, "Why would you want to go back in time?" Hugo the badger sighed and slumped his shoulders and said, "Because life was easier when I was a baby badger. I didn't have to dig my own set or find my own food. My mother did everything for me. But now I have so many responsibilities, and it gets hard." The long-eared owl was silent for a moment, its feathers ruffling gently in the breeze. Then the owl said, "Ah, young one, growing up is not always easy, but it is necessary. It has to be. Tell me, do you enjoy having a set of your own?" "Well, yes," Hugo admitted. "It's nice and cozy, and I can make it just the way I like it." "And do you enjoy finding your own food?" asked the owl. "I guess so," Hugo the badger said, scratching his head. "It's kind of fun digging around and finding worms and beetles. Sometimes I even find tasty mushrooms." The long-eared owl chuckled softly. "You see, Hugo, responsibilities are part of growing up. It may seem difficult at times, but it also gives you freedom. Once you grow up and move away from your mother, you get to make your own choices, build your own home, and discover your own adventures. That's something to be proud of." Hugo the badger tilted his head, considering the owl's words, and said, "I never thought about it that way." The long-eared owl continued, "And remember, the skills you've learned digging your set and foraging for food make you an even better badger. Imagine if you never grew up. You'd never learn how to take care of yourself or explore the world as you do." "That's true," Hugo said slowly. If I were still a baby, I'd probably be stuck in the set all the time. And I would have to eat all the food that my mother always gives me. And I couldn't just look for my own food. The long-eared owl nodded. Exactly. So instead of wishing to go back in time, why not focus on the joys of being who you are now? There's a big, beautiful world out there for a young badger like you. Then the long-eared owl flew away. As Hugo the badger walked back to his set that night, he thought about what the owl had said. Sure, being a baby badger had been fun, but he realized that he liked his life now too. Ever since he grew up and moved away from his mother, he loved the freedom of digging his own set. He loved the thrill of finding hidden snacks in the soil, and he was proud of making his own way in the world. And he was able to travel to visit his mother anytime he wanted. When he reached his set, Hugo sat at the entrance and gazed at the twinkling stars above. Maybe, possibly, perhaps, growing up isn't so bad after all, he said with a smile. From that day on, Hugo stopped worrying about going back in time. Instead, he focused on the present, enjoying his own adventures, and knowing that every new night in the hills brought something exciting to discover that he could experience for himself. And if he ever felt overwhelmed by responsibilities, he'd remember the owl's words, that having responsibilities means having freedom too. Hugo then curled up in his little nook in his set. He wrapped his tail snugly around him and started drifting off to sleep. He was still the same Hugo, but now he felt a little bit wiser and a lot more grateful for the life he had now. And the badger lived happily ever after. The end. Badgers are short-legged omnivores from the family Mustelidae. The family Mustelidae includes other animals like otters, wolverines, minks, and weasels. Badgers can be found around the world in North America, parts of Africa and the Middle East, Europe, and Asia. A male adult badger is called a boar, and a female is a sow, and a young badger is called a cub in Europe and can be called a kit in America. A group of badgers is called a seat, and a colony of badgers are called clans. There are many types of badgers all around the world, like the honey badger found in Africa or the Middle East or India, the American badger found in North America, the European badger found in Europe, the Asian badger, Japanese badger, Chinese ferret badger, Burmese ferret badger, Javan ferret badger, and the Bornean ferret badger found in Asia and in Southeast Asia. The word badger can be applied to an early 16th century word, badgeard, that could be referring to the white mark as a badge on the forehead. Or the name badger can come from the French word for digger, bichère. These are two of the most commonly known reasons why they're called badgers most of the time. Badgers make cozy underground homes called a set, with many tunnels and rooms. Badgers even have outdoor bathrooms near their set to keep things clean. They live in places like forests, grasslands, and farmlands. Badgers mostly have striped faces with black and white lines that make them easy to recognize. Their bodies are short, strong, and they have sharp claws for digging through the dirt. Badgers can live from 14 up to 24 years. Some badgers can weigh up to 40 pounds. Badgers have short and wide bodies with claws for digging. They have elongated, weasel-like heads and small ears. Their tails can vary in length from short to long, depending on the species and depending on the age. Badgers mostly have black faces with distinctive white markings, with gray bodies and a light-colored stripe from head to tail, with dark legs and light-colored underbellies. They can grow to be about 35 inches long. One of the largest badgers is the European badger, and some of the smaller and lighter badgers are the American badger, the hog badger, and the honey badger, as well as stink badgers and ferret badgers. Badgers eat worms, insects, and berries, but they could also eat small animals. Badgers are generally nocturnal. However, in areas where there's not a lot of humans, they can be seen foraging for food during the day. Mother badgers take great care of their cubs and teach them how to survive in the wild. Badgers can run really fast, up to 19 miles per hour. They're excellent climbers and can even swim. Have you seen a real-life badger before? If you have, where did you see it? If you want to write to us, ask your parent to email us at animalstoriesforkids@gmail.com and tell us what you think of our stories. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/animalstoriesforkids. Until next time, bye!